three trails were the Oregon, California, and Santa Fe. They were the gateways into the untamed West. The span between the Louisiana Purchase until 1912, when Arizona became the 48th contiguous state. In these years, many men and women traveled on the trails and came across difficulties and situations we can barely imagine today. Skirmishes and battles were carried out along these trails from the Border Wars in 1854, the American Civil War in 1861 to 1865, and the American Indian War, fought throughout the rest of the 19th century. These left their marks on the land and the people involved for generations to come.
That is an interesting thing. If you're speaking about the Native Americans as they were here in Jackson County, Missouri, there was hardly ever any problems right here where we live. The problems occurred more farther out west as the wagon trains traveled west on the different trails. Then they might encounter Indians. I think the example of the two men who bought a cannon to protect themselves from Indians.
There was in fact a case when two men brought a cannon for protection from the natives. This hardly fit in the wagon because of how cramped the wagons were with all the supplies.
A stigma about Indians in the far west deemed them as uncivilized savages for many years. This rapid movement to the west left remnants of wagon spoil still visible today.
Oh, the things the pioneers took with them. They usually took along a lot of food goods, medicine chest with certain medicines that they could use, home remedies that they could use. They took the usual things, tea and coffee, and there were guidebooks that had recommendations on how many pounds of beans or how many pounds of flour and how much of different food items they should be procuring, like at Independence or wherever their jumping off town was.
There was a massive list of items that the pioneers took on their long journey west. These items were vital to their survival. They had to choose wisely between what they took with them. It could mean life or death. One big market was pelts from animals in the northwest, like the fox and the badger, and selling them could provide for a family. These people endured very harsh lives, and many lost them in gruesome ways. The biggest killer wouldn't be what you expect.
The very worst disease of all was one that was called cholera. And the interesting thing is about cholera, they did not understand that it was due to impure water. In doing some research about cholera as a disease, what I found out is that most of the time, people who drank a lot of tea, who had to boil their water, they were not affected by cholera. But people who did not drink tea, and thus boiling the water to get rid of the little bugs and bacteria that was in the stagnant water, those individuals would come down being sick, worse. And it was once you contracted cholera, you just simply did not survive. You died.
You would not want to catch cholera. It was a ticket to a very early death and was easily the worst disease they had back then. The three trails spread across several future states, and many historical battles were on this very soil. They left a reminder of the violence that occurred on the very ground that we step foot on today, and all of the men and women who lost their lives in these battles and skirmishes. There are still remnants of this violence that took place long ago today. Sailors and navigators made their way through the rough waters to get further west.
Women from different backgrounds made history and defied the odds.
Outlaws, merchants, highwaymen, and ordinary people all had different reasons to go west. The Pittsburgh Watch sawmill, which was built in 1832 by the Jackson County judge, then purchased by Anthony Watts in 1849, and he transformed it into a grist mill. Almost a century later, in 1942, 9 tons of iron and steel were donated for World War II and the mill was destroyed. There are still many reminders of this great era that are present today. Some remind you of the brilliant feats of these pioneers, and some are a grim reminder of what happened right beneath our feet these many years ago.